Releasing Trauma is sponsored by the Global Association for Trauma Recovery. The Global Association for Trauma Recovery is a social impact organization serving as a resource for survivors and their families, dedicated to facilitating change by spreading trauma-related awareness and thus creating a more trauma-informed world. Learn more at gaftr.org. Welcome to Releasing Trauma, a Survivor's Podcast. I am your host, Tracy Osborne. I am a survivor of emotional bullying, rape, sexual assault, domestic abuse, and grief. After losing my husband in 2019, I set off on a new adventure to help other women release their trauma and create a life they can cherish. Each week, I will feature a guest expert or a survivor to share their stories, tips, wisdom, and more. The goal is so that you can take away even just the smallest nugget of information you can use in your life right now to make a change, and to remind you that you're not alone. There is life after trauma, and you can move from victim to thriver and create a life you can cherish. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I am your host, Tracy Osborne. With me today is Dr. Madhavi Vemireddy and Jacques. And we are going to be talking about resources and strategies that are available for working women who are bearing the brunt of caregiving responsibilities. And I know all too well how overwhelming being a caregiver is. So this is going to be a great topic, and I'm excited to dive in. So Madhavi and Jeff, thank you so much for coming onto the show today.
Thank you, Tracy, for having us. Yes, absolutely.
So I typically start out the shows with having our guests tell us a little bit about themselves. Madhavi, you're gonna start, and Jeff said that he'll add some colors. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah. So Jeff and I, we're a married couple, but we are also partners in business, and we're also actively caregiving, for our eldest son who's on the autism spectrum. I think our journey, we're both physicians by training, and we spent the last 20 years building programs to help individuals lead healthier lives. And our caregiving journey started about 10 years ago when our eldest son, Zavi, was born. He was born a few weeks premature, was in the NICU for about 6 weeks. And at that time, we found out that he had congenital heart disease. But we thought it was something that could get fixed as he got older and wouldn't require open heart surgery. So when we took him home after 6 weeks, we just realized he was, not gaining weight, not hitting some of his developmental milestones. And we were basically in and out of the ICU for children. Probably, I think in total, we probably spent about 11 weeks out of, the first 9 months of his life in and out of the hospital. And despite the fact that my husband, Jeff, and I are physicians, we really struggled because he had a really rare condition, and folks didn't really know what was wrong with him. Fortunately, we were able to pull together some experts that helped diagnose and recommend a treatment plan for him, which ended up being open heart surgery. So at 9 months, weighing 9 pounds, he underwent, 5-6 hours of surgery, and, luckily it was curative. It cured his heart condition. And so over the last, first several years, we were really focused on catching him up developmentally, speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy. And at the age of 5, he was diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum. So then that opened up a whole new area that, again, we didn't have expertise in. We didn't really know what, as parents, what you need, what should you do when your child is diagnosed with autism? Where do you go? Who are the experts? And 5 years later after that diagnosis, we're still pulling together a team of experts and therapists to really help catch him up. And so I think it's a combination of, our experience with him, as well as, our experience with, Jeff's dad that, I'll let him talk more about, where we've been caregiving for family members and our own personal experience building digital health programs. We just felt there needed to be a better way, a better experience for family caregivers, so they weren't struggling to, piecemeal together a plan and find the right experts. And so that was really, why we started our company, Care Tribe.
Yeah, I think I'll just add a couple of things there to that, Tracy, and for your audience. As physicians, you're trained to gather data and make decisions. And a lot of caregiving is waiting for others to share things with you, give you information, give you perspective. And we found that sitting back on our heels was just anathema to how we had been trained. And so we became extremely proactive. And I would say almost to the point of being demanding for clarity, because if you wait for others to give you what you need, you'll find that you're constantly struggling. And even when you demand it, I think you wind up struggling somewhat, but you have to be much more proactive and engaged. As Madhavi alluded to, when Zavi, our eldest, was, I guess, about 5, my dad and my mom got off their 50th wedding anniversary cruise, and dad had become different during that time period, during the last days of the cruise, and unfortunately had a very large brain tumor that would wind up killing him about 9 months later. And we were very fortunate. We were able to pull together resources, move him out of New Jersey into Manhattan, where we live, so he'd be close to us and we could lend mom and dad support. And he died at home, surrounded by his family, which I think is, what anyone would wish for ultimately after a long life. But looking back at that 9-month experience and sort of thinking about the 9-month experience with Zavi early on in his life, those journeys weren't actually all that different. The context, the age of our loved one, the specific issues, the kind of ologists that we needed to help us figure out a course and a plan, those differed. But the pressures, the stresses, and the needs of the caregiver to be effective in caregiving were actually almost completely the same. And so as we thought about that, and we were thinking about the larger struggle, the question we kept on coming back to was, well, what do people do who aren't a physician married to another physician living in a major metropolitan city, able to activate resources or find resources with experience managing, healthcare resources? And that really sort of became the impetus for us to leave our corporate jobs and come together to build Care Tribe.
Wow. Okay. So first off, as a mom of 4, I could not imagine my 9-month-old baby going under the knife. I would have been a freaking mess. When my oldest was 18 months, she had tubes put in her ears. That was like a 15-minute procedure, and I cried the entire time. I couldn't imagine 5 hours of my baby being in surgery. I would have lost it big time.
Yeah, it was probably for us one of the worst experiences, and best, obviously, because we had such a great outcome. But yeah, those 5 hours, I think we were holding our breath.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard enough when my daughter went for scoliosis surgery and had a rod put in her back. She was, 14, 15? Yeah. That was hard enough, but oh God, I just couldn't imagine it as a baby. Whoa. Yeah. So
I was talking, Tracy, to, I had launched another business years ago, helping the parents of preemies.
Yeah.
And I was telling some investors the story, of taking Zavi. They allowed us to walk Zavi, carry him into the OR.
That's good.
Had us all bunny suited up and whatever, and putting him down on the table, I think was really, and then walking out, was really one of the worst and most horrible experiences as a parent that I've ever had. And I hope I never have to have another experience like that. And I was talking about it and just got clustered and I started to cry, and I just couldn't control myself because I had gone back to that moment.
Yeah.
And really just couldn't pull my head, out of that place for a couple of minutes. It was really, it's horrible.
Yeah. I don't blame you. I think, I mean, like I said, I would have been a complete mess. I have a daughter, my daughter who had scoliosis. She has DiGeorge syndrome, which listeners, for those of you who don't know what it is, it means that she's missing a small piece of one of her chromosomes. And that little missing piece creates an entire host of problems. But we didn't know until she was, I think she was about 14 when we finally got a diagnosis. But I've known her whole life something was off. She didn't hit all her milestones. We had to put her in speech therapy at age 3 because she was still just kind of grunting and stuff like that. I used to have to get her younger sister to translate for me. I'd be like, what is she saying? She's the only one who could understand her. How kids can do that, it's beyond me. But, it was frustrating being, I'm her caregiver. I'm raising her, and I know as a mother, there's something not right. And it wasn't until she had a migraine for like 15 days and spent a week in the hospital. And then I took her to a neurologist, and the neurologist walked in, took one look at her and said, have you ever had her tested for genetics? And I was like, you see it. There's something, she has almond shaped eyes, almost like Down syndrome, but not quite.
Right.
And, so it was so nice to finally have somebody who saw it and could give me answers.
Right.
And that was tough. And then I was also the full-time caregiver for my stepmother who had a stroke, and she was basically paraplegic. She could stand on her legs for a couple of seconds, but she can't walk or anything like that. So I was her full-time caregiver. I had to do everything for her. And on top of raising kids, running a business, that was hard as a caregiver. I gave up my life for like 4 years. And I didn't have any resources or, places to go to vent or, anything like that. It was hard.
And Tracy, like us, there are 9 million of us in this country. And I think that's probably, that number is probably underreported. Sure. But of the close to 60 million of us who caregive at any point in time in America, about 9 million are so-called sandwich caregivers, where they're caregiving for a child who may have needs that are beyond the norm, and are also at the same time caregiving for an elder loved one who may or may not be a family member, but that we're just caregiving for. And you're literally, burning out at every end. It's not both ends, it's every end, because you just can't make enough hours or enough resources show up to sort of keep your head above water. And I would say just one quick thing about the DiGeorge syndrome and finding out about your daughter at age 14. We've had chromosomal tests done for Zavi, I think 2 or 3 times now. And the science of what are called micro deletions, these tiny little pieces of a chromosome that don't work for some reason or are gone for some reason in children, is constantly evolving. And so I think one piece of advice that I would give is, if like something is wrong and you get tested once and said that we can't find anything, that doesn't mean that in a year or 2 or 3 or 4, a new microdeletion will not be discovered, and that will open up the opportunity for treatment that can be life-altering or life-saving. So I think I would, as a piece of advice, because I know a lot of what you do here is helping individuals learn how they can support themselves, is that don't take a test result of inconclusive, we can't find anything. Don't take that as the final word, because the science is constantly moving forward.
Oh, I completely agree. And, genetic testing never crossed my mind. I mean, I've done all the dyslexia and autism and ADD testing. I mean, all those testings to try and figure out why she had such a severe learning disability. And that's all we could classify it as, was a severe learning disability. And then once I got the diagnosis of DeGeorge and I started studying up on it, everything started falling in place. So I agree, keep seeking answers. If one doctor isn't giving you the answers, find another one. Somebody out there has the answers. You just have to keep looking for them. So let's talk a little bit about, some of the resources and strategies and stuff that are out there for these women who are burning the candle, like you say, at all ends. They don't always have familial support or spousal support. A lot of times it's them. So, where do they go for help? Whether it's information or, just support, somewhere to vent, how do they get a day off? All of that.
I think one of the first things that we really emphasize on is asking for help, because what we've seen is that so many caregivers, especially women, they end up isolating themselves in their caregiving responsibilities. And they don't ask for help. There's such a stigma related to caregiving because people are afraid to let their manager know at work, or let their, HR team know at work that, they have these caregiving responsibilities that are difficult and challenging, because they think by raising their hand, they're basically saying, hey, I'm distracted. I have, these other responsibilities that I need to manage. But I think, and we've seen data that, maybe only 50% of employees who are caregiving tell their manager, right? But that's not good, because we need to let your managers, the HR team know, because there might be options. There might be an opportunity to take advantage of a flexible working schedule, or there might be resources, benefits that usually companies pull together to support their employees that can help you. And part of one of the things that we do when we are brought on by a company to support their employees is we identify, like, what are all those resources that might be available. It could be, access to counseling through your EAP benefit or behavioral health benefit. Maybe you have access to, certain childcare benefits or backup care if you're taking care of, elder loved one. So we try to stitch together, okay, what resources are available to you for free that you just don't remember that you have access to, that we try to, push out to you proactively for you to take advantage of. And then at the same time, we provide a expert social worker that's dedicated to that caregiver to help them find, are there community resources that can help them? A lot of the times it's really just helping them manage their stress, right? And really having a trusted person that they can talk to talk about the challenges they're going through, to come up with a plan that can help take off some of the responsibilities off their plate, and and think about the legal components, the safety components, the financial components, because there's so much that you need to think about when you're caregiving for a loved one. It is almost impossible to think that one person can do it all, especially on top of a full-time job, which, is the reality of most family caregivers. And so that's, I think, the first critical area is ask for help. And if you're working, start with your HR team or manager. Otherwise, it's looking at, do you have access to community resources? If you have access to a benefit like Care Tribe, then take advantage of that, right? Because then you can have someone that's really helping to put together a plan for you and find the resources for you. So that's research you don't need to do. And so that becomes a really critical area to start.
And if I could add just a couple of thoughts to that very important point of asking for help, looking for help, and not being afraid of repercussions or consequences of asking for help. I think another important part of asking for help is not being afraid to say, I need help with the following, and being concrete on what those items are. Because what you'll find otherwise is that people want to help, they don't know how. And you'll get help that is of questionable utility. And we were talking to somebody who asked for help in their church and to family members who were nearby. And when their loved one came out of the hospital, they had like 11 tuna casseroles waiting for them at the house. And that's great if you love tuna, and if you don't get fed up with tuna casseroles and you have space for freezing all that. But I bet saying things like, could somebody, go shopping for me? Here's a list and here's some money. Or could somebody, pick up my child at school at this time because I have to be at home with mom or dad. Being concrete around needs then lends people agency and gives them structure. And you actually can check things off the list, as opposed to getting people with the best of intentions doing things that may not deliver real value at the moment when they're supporting you.
That's fantastic advice. But all of it, but especially what Jeff was just saying about being very concrete about it. When when I lost my husband, people wanted to help out, but again, they didn't know what to do. And me being me, it was just, I'll just handle everything, as opposed to saying, can you do this? Can you do this? And can you do this for me? I think that that's very important to, like you said, people want to help, but they just don't always know how. So if you give them a task, then it makes it easier for them, and they feel like they're accomplishing a lot more than just making a tuna casserole for you.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about Care Tribe? What is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Care Tribe is a platform that we built to support family caregivers of, irrespective of who you're taking care of, whether that's, a child with special needs, your spouse or partner, or, an older loved one, and irrespective of condition. For us, what we've built is a digital platform with pathways that are very specific to different caregiving situations like Alzheimer's disease or stroke or depression or autism or developmental delays, because we're really trying to understand where that individual is in their journey so we can educate them about what to expect, what are the things that they should be looking out for, or what type of support they may need. And we couple that with access to our team of licensed clinical social workers. They're there to help them find the right resources, help them manage their stress. We find a number of family caregivers that we're working with, they need counseling support for themselves because, they're at the early stage of depression, or they are at a stage where, they're close to burning out. And so they need that, mental health support for themselves, as well as looking at, how can we best support the needs of their loved one. And we provide this today as a resource to employers as well as health plans. It's a benefit that they can purchase for their members. But we also have it available for individuals to come directly to Care Tribe and to and purchase the services for themselves to get the support that they need.
That is awesome. That is really fantastic. How can people find Care Tribe? Is it just caretribe.com?
Yep, it's just caretribe.com. We have a section for families that you can go to and learn more about. Any questions, you can contact us, and we'll get back to you right away. And it's a very short intake form to really understand what is your specific caregiving situation, where do you need help, and from there you get connected right away to to a dedicated social worker, and you also get connected to our web-based platform that's that you can see on your phone or tablet, and get access to information that's specific to your needs. I think one of the biggest challenges right now is that when family caregivers need help, they go to their family and friends to get advice on what they should do, or find someone that's been in a similar situation, and they go to Google and to research and find resources. But we're trying to take away as much work that family caregivers need to do, because they don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the time, and that's why many times they're just putting out fires and doing the best that they can. We want to enable them to be more proactive by giving them access to experts and access to content and action plans that are built for their specific needs. And that's our mission.
That's amazing. But Madhavi and Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking with me today, telling us, a little bit about your story, and giving us some insight on how we can help ourselves and help our loved ones who are caregivers. This has been a great show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tracy, for having us on your show and for allowing us to share our story. I think we're given that all of us will experience caregiving, if we haven't already. We think it's just so important for all of us to be prepared.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again. And listeners, thank you as always for tuning in, and we will talk to you in the next show.